All right, Burka, what do you guys actually do?
The North American Air Defense is a binational command that was stood up in North America in 1958. So it's a command between Canada and United States, and we look after defense of North America from missile threats, from aircraft threats, cruise missiles, and naval approaches to North America. So we've been doing that since 1958.
At NORAD, what sort of aircraft do you guys use? What variants?
Between the two countries, so Canada flies primarily the F-18 Hornet, similar to Australia. And then the US flies the F-16 Fighting Falcon, F-15 Eagle, F-22 Raptor, and F-35 Lightning, also similar to Australia.
So today at the demo, you guys were chasing like an aircraft. What were you guys actually doing in that demo?
I was in the aircraft that was being chased. I was piloting the Piper Navajo. What we use that airplane for is to simulate potential temporary flight restriction, or TFR, violators. So what we demonstrated was somebody inadvertently or purposefully flew into that temporary flight restriction, and we demonstrated what happens when you do that. So the very first pass was the F-16s identifying us and trying to get a hold of us on the radio. We want to, keep the lowest level of escalation as possible, so radio contact is the first.
On the ground, air traffic control and NORAD controllers are urgently attempting radio contact.
And if for some reason the pilot's incapacitated or the radios aren't working, then they start to slowly increase the level of intercept there. So the very first pass was when he turned, and it's called a guide pass. So he rocks his wings, or she rocks her wings, and they turn away. So the violator aircraft is supposed to rock their wings in acknowledgement and follow that fighter jet.
Which you didn't do.
We did not. Yeah, we did not. We simulated that we were non-compliant is the actual word. So we were non-compliant. And then when we set up for the second pass, now that's the next level during the intercept, and that's called a headbutt maneuver. What the fighters do in the headbutt maneuver is they'll turn across the nose of the violating aircraft. And in a real world situation, they would put flares out, which are really hot pieces of metal that are burning, to get the attention of the pilot, whether that's with the noise, because you can absolutely hear a fighter jet when it pulls up on your wing, or you see the airplane cross in front of you.
Did you feel it? Did you feel the wake turbulence?
We did, yeah. It'll bump your head.
Yeah.
And then obviously, if there's still no compliance after that, then it escalates even higher to a possibility that there might be an engagement. And so that process of engagement goes through so many levels just to make sure that everything is sorted out. We have all the information, or the commanders have the information they need to make that decision whether or not to actually engage the violating airplane. And that's the extreme. That's if everything goes wrong and this guy or gal who's in that airplane is determined as a threat to whatever they're protecting, then the escalation goes one step higher.
How can you be determined as a threat?
Well, there are more people on the ground than there are in the air. So, they're looking at databases, what's the tail number? Do they know who the pilot is? Were there any threats that came through, like bomb threats or whatever on Facebook or any of the social media stuff? So there are a lot of people that dig into, like, as soon as you see the tail number of the airplane, there's a lot of people researching, okay, this is where it's based. This is the flight plan that was filed. So there's a lot of things that go into determining if it's actually a threat or not.
So it's not just you guys in the air, it's also people on the ground determining whether it's a threat or not.
100%. There are people that are sitting in the various region command centers and the sector command centers as you go down the different levels. FAA's involved, depending on, there might be some federal police, FBI. Yeah, if it's determined to be about to be a threat, there's a lot of stuff that happens in a very short period of time.
All right, so there's an aircraft coming in over the ocean that doesn't have its transponder turned on. How do you guys even know it's there? Like, how do you know exactly where to fly to?
So that does happen more often than you think. It's either a transponder failure, or they've turned it off, or they've put the incorrect code in. So NORAD has a series of air defense radars that are all around North America, and they're watching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So they're out there watching, and if something looks incorrect, or they're expecting an airplane and it's not there, or they're not expecting an airplane and they see this on the radar, that's when the whole process starts. So it goes from the command centers or the regions or the sectors, and they alert the fighters, and they go through their steps of different levels of readiness, and then if they need to, they'll scramble the fighters and they'll give them a heading, a vector, and an altitude. And the fighters have amazing radars on them. So the beautiful F-22, F-16, F-18, F-35 all have really good radars on board. So once they're airborne and they're kind of pointed in the right direction, then the fighters can pick up those airplanes and then eventually go to a visual intercept.
So from getting the call on the ground, how long does it take you to get from off the ground and to the subject, for example?
That actual number is classified, but let me put it this way. It's a very, very short period of time. These fighter pilots are trained. They practice this stuff almost daily. So put it this way, they can be airborne and intercepted an airplane shorter than it takes you to get off the couch, get a snack, and then come back. So it's pretty fast.
Everywhere across America right now, if you got a call right now, there would be someone being able to get up in the air and defend North America.
100%, all across America and across Canada as well. And not only that, we're defending and watching the skies to the north as well. We have some neighbors to the north that aren't entirely friendly to Canada and the United States. And we're watching those as well. So we have fighters that can go and intercept Russian bombers or other airplanes that are up there on the coasts, looking south as well. Like 360 degrees around North America is defended all the time.
Sometimes on TV you'll see maybe like a submarine or a boat out, or a drug smuggling boat coming to America, and then you might see like fighter jets or just bombers up ahead. Like, is that you guys?
So yes and no. So NORAD itself is responsible for maritime warning. So we're watching the seas for boats and that kind of stuff. But when it starts to interdict those boats, that becomes more of a national service. So the United States Navy or the United States Coast Guard will take over, or the Canadian Navy or the Canadian Coast Guard will take over. So NORAD doesn't necessarily defend against the boats or the submarines themselves, but we're part of the maritime warning that lets people know, like, hey, there's somebody out there. They might not be doing something that they should be. So we pass that information, and the agencies work very closely together. So NORAD provides the information, the Navy or the Coast Guard uses that information. And if we need to support for whatever reason, then that option is there, but it's typically the Coast Guard. And then
so you guys are just like one big radar circling all over North America.
With missiles as well, and fighter jets, 100%, yeah. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we track Santa too.
So what if there's a big event within, like, on the land within North America? Are you guys also protecting, so in case like the Pope or the President somewhere, are you guys also protecting those events?
Absolutely. So if there's any special event or a presidential movement or a dignitary, we set up what's called a temporary flight restriction, a TFR, and that's passed on through the NOTAM system to all the pilots that are around. And then once that's set up, then there are airplanes that are either overhead all the time, or they're on short notice to go and intercept a potential TFR violator. So the information is out there. Oftentimes, if somebody penetrates that TFR, it's by accident. They haven't checked their NOTAMs, they haven't looked, they haven't called flight services, so they end up in the TFR inadvertently. But 100%, we're there all the time, ready to take action if required. What
could be some sort of punishment of someone if they just go into the TFR airspace?
That's a great question, because once you are directed to land somewhere, whether it's through the fighters or whether it's from air traffic control, when you land, there's going to be some police forces. You're going to make some new friends. Whether it's going to be federal, FBI, or it's going to be local police or whatever, you're going to meet some new friends, and they're going to meet you at the airplane, and they're going to try and figure out what happened, how you got there. So there can be things as they can impound your airplane.
Wow.
You'll never see it again, or they can revoke your license or give you a restriction on your license, and it goes down to fines too. You can be fined a pretty significant amount of money for violating a TFR.
I could imagine just the fuel to get the jets in the air just to go intercept.
Yeah,
it would be crazy.
It's a huge cost. I'm not going to throw a number out there exactly what the cost is, but you think two F-22s that are scrambled and they're full afterburner.
Yeah.
They're not to mention the controllers that are on the ground, the police services that meet you. Like it's a huge cost. So depending on how dumb you were and how you answer those friends, your new friends, the police people, how you answer them, whether or not you pay for that out of your pocket.
Yeah.
It could be very expensive.
We're all seen in the movies, maybe like a Cessna, it's going towards the Super Bowl, looks like it might go crash into the Super Bowl. And sometimes in the movies, I see a fighter jet and just come tip its wing. Do you guys actually do that?
So the answer to that question is no. But if you remember from your World War II history, during the Battle of Britain, when they were dropping shooting the V1 or the V2 rockets at the UK, the Spitfires would run out of bullets, and they would say the only way we can get that is to tip. It was called tipping.
Yeah.
So they would tip it. But the answer to your question is no. When you look at that beautiful fighter over there, or the beautiful F-18 or F-16, as soon as you do that, you're going to damage the airplane. There are so many other ways to eliminate that threat. than to tip it.
Yeah, eliminate it. All right. And one last question: how do I actually get into NORAD? Because I see you have an F-18 badge on your shoulder. So, what are the requirements needed to fly different jets?
Well, first of all, you've got to get into the military. So it's primarily the people that do the fighting and the controlling are all military folks. We have a lot of civilians that also support and work in the headquarters and the various levels, but all of the fighter pilots and the controllers are military. So once you're in the military, and then you've got to become a pilot. So you got to go through all the pilot training, and then once you get selected for your particular aircraft, whether it's F-16, F-18, F-15, F-22, F-35, all of the above, then it's a really vigorous training program. You just don't hop in one of these babies and go and start intercepting people over TFRs. And even after you're qualified, there's ongoing training. So the F-16s that you guys saw flying today, they train for that mission, like I said, almost daily.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just repetition. You got to get it right because it's an important job. And then you have to be able to do it safely, because the last thing you want to do is endanger somebody's life unnecessarily. They accidentally are in a TFR, so you don't want them to get hurt. You don't want anybody on the ground to get hurt. So safety, and then just repetition and keep doing it over and over and over again. So the folks that you saw flying today, top notch. Every single pilot that's ever sat in an F-22 or any of the fighter jets is fantastic, well-trained, super professional, and they want to make sure that everybody stays safe.
Where would people find more about you guys?
So the best way is to go to our website, norad.mil, and there's all kinds of information on what NORAD does.
All right, that link will be on the screen right now. Thank you so much, Buka, for the interview, and I hope to see you around.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hopefully not in the sky, though.
Right. Check your NOTAMs.